Before we start the video, I would like to thank my patrons for going out of their way to support me in making these videos. If you'd also like to support me and maybe see some art in the meantime, the link is in the description below. Hello and welcome back to a new and improved series of videos where I teach you the ins and outs of a vehicle, how to best utilize them, as well as helping you decide if it's worth your time or not. And today we're going to be looking at a very much broken and neglected vehicle in War Thunder. Yep, today we're going to be looking at the Leclerc series of MBTs. So before we go into the actual guide, I need to set some context. So when it comes to an MBT, what are some of the most basic factors that determines their combat effectiveness? They're no-brainers, right? The firepower, mobility, and protection of a tank forms the three most basic factors that determines the effectiveness of any tank, with outliers like the fire control systems, crew comforts, and other things that comes into consideration later on. But I think we can all agree that those three factors are the most important, especially in War Thunder when that is all that really matters to the player. So where does the Leclerc stand in the hierarchy of the game when those three factors are called into question? Well, at first glance, that should be an easy question considering the Leclerc was and still is one of the most expensive tanks operated by NATO. And on top of that, the UAE highly praised the tank's survivability and combat performance in its time operating in Yemen. So how about in War Thunder? Well, about that. Despite what every document the player was able to dig up about the Leclerc's armor protection among other things, the Leclerc's armor is unable to protect you from even the 3BM42. Yep, you heard me right, the 3BM42. Oh yeah, did I mention the Leclerc's in-game lacks a laser warning receiver despite all four models featuring an antenna on the roof? But anyways, apart from everything, the Leclerc's armor can still be described as very disappointing, but for whatever reason, you can still find yourself surviving some shots from clueless players. But anyways, what about the other two factors I hear you asking? Don't worry, I'm getting to that right now. So the mobility and firepower of the Leclerc is not great, but also not terrible. The mobility is quite fantastic as you're given a 1500 horsepower diesel engine paired with an automatic transmission that allows you to reach a top speed of 72 kilometers per hour. And no, it's not just a theoretical speed. You can quite often hit that top speed even off-road, so I think we can safely say that the Leclerc's mobility is amongst the best of its BR. Firepower-wise, not so much. The Giat 120-26 F1 is an extremely good gun, and with Gaijin finally fixing his autoloader making it go from 6 to 5 seconds, you became extremely powerful, now being able to put more rounds downrange. However, the downside in firepower doesn't lie in its gun and loading system, but within its ammo. The round you get on the Leclerc is the OFL 120 F1 APFSDS shell, which is able to penetrate 575mm of rolled homogeneous armor at point blank, which makes you one of the worst dart in the entire game, considering everything else you're coming across like the DM53 or the MA29A2 all having at least 600mm of penetration. Well, now I hear you asking, but the 3BM60 and the Swedes all get around that pens less than 600mm. Well, you are correct, but tanks like the T80 BDM and the Stridsvagn 122B+, as well as the Abrams and Leopards are all extremely well-armored tanks. Yes, they all have weak spots, but compared to the Leclerc, they are extremely well armored, giving them an extremely big advantage both in close quarters and range engagements. So what should you do to play this tank? Well, to be completely honest, the Leclerc can do well in most roles you place it in. You've got extremely good mobility, decent armor, and a pretty good gun, so there really isn't a field the Leclerc would underperform in. So it really just comes down to how you personally play the Leclerc. Like for example in this clip, you can see that I flanked the entire enemy team and yup, I'm dead, just like that. Why? Well, simple really. All the Leclerc's problem can be pinpointed to Gaijin refusing to accept sources provided by the player base. But anyways, on to the next segment. So the Leclerc family in War Thunder comes in 4 different variants, those being the S1, S2, S21, and the Azure. How can you tell the difference between the Leclercs? Well, let's play a game called Name That Leclerc, starting now. Congratulations, if you picked the Leclerc S2, then you will be correct. Now, on to the next round. If you pick the Leclerc S21, then you will be correct. Now, let's try something a bit more challenging. Can you tell me the Leclerc's variant in the order of the images? Before we begin, comment below if you know. If you thought they were all Leclerc S1s, then you are fucking wrong, as the second image is Charles Leclerc from the F1 series. But anyways, all jokes aside, the Leclerc series and MBTs don't really sport that much of a difference, with only two that has a noticeable difference being the Leclerc S21 and the Leclerc Azure. With the S21 having more armor near the gunner's side and having commander's thermals, while the Azure is basically the S2 with the addition of the Azure ERA, flat armor, and the addition of a remote control 7.62mm machine gun operated by the commander. In real life, these Leclercs have quite a bit of differences, like for example the S21s having additional titanium inserts, and both the Leclerc S21 and the Azure having extra composite packages offering additional protection. Why did Gaijin not add them? Your guess is as good as mine. So now getting back onto my original topic, how should you utilize this tank and is it worth your time? Well, the Leclerc is my favorite tank after all, so I may be a little biased. The biggest problem with the Leclerc as of now is a lack of armor as well as defensive measures. And because of that, I will highly recommend a passive yet aggressive playstyle. You have the mobility and enough armor to resist some rounds coming your way, so I find that to be the most effective in my time of playing it, so far. But is it worth your time? Well, that really comes down to two things: future potential and possibilities, as well as your personal playstyle. The Leclerc family of tanks has a lot of potential, especially if War Thunder decides to finally listen to his player base. However, that is not a guarantee. When the Leclerc eventually do get his armor buffs and a laser warning receiver, then the Leclerc can be used a lot more aggressively, so if you're someone that is used to the T80 and Leopards, then I would not personally recommend it. But if you're someone who prefers not to brawl and be the center of a push, then I think you'll find the Leclerc enjoyable, as it can be played similar to that of the Type 90 and the Type 10. But anyways, that's the Leclerc for you. Let me know what you think of it in the comments, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, it really means a lot to me. You can also tell me what tanks you would like to see me talk about next in the comments or in my Discord server. So until next time, go show those clueless German mains what happens when a tungsten rod does after passing through their tank. See you next time. Look at this specimen of a car. What is this Nissan Leaf looking ass? Fucking little box. Bro got that brown fucking brown looking ass car with that 2 horsepower.